My name is Luke. I was born in the UK. I grew up in Brazil, and now I live in Poland. I've been here for 6 years, so that's why I ran up the hill. I was on a train just coming from where I live in Wroclaw. And it's great to meet you guys, to see you here. The content we're going to look into is called this, I call it the 7 Lies of the Global Youth Culture and how the gospel responds. And I want to dig into a few different aspects. First, I'll go into the culture around us, secular culture, globalized culture. What are some of the challenges? Then I'll go into the gospel, how it responds, how we have a message of hope for this generation today. And then after, I'll go a bit more into specifically discipleship and how we can build bridges between the secular culture and the church. Why is it people are not coming into the church? How can we reach out? So I'll talk about all those different things. Hopefully I'll keep stopping for Q&A times. We'll have a break in the middle, and we'll be done before the end of the time. So it'll be a good time together. I said already where I'm from. My wife, Ania, is from Poland. We have 2 kids. Daniel is 12. Sarah is 7. And they grew up here. Sarah was born here. Daniel was born in Brazil. So we're a Polish family, apart from me. We're an international family, and we love serving Jesus together in a mission called Steiger. And throughout what I share today, you'll hear different stories and things from the mission I work with, because that's my main source of content, is the experience on the front lines, sharing Jesus with people who wouldn't usually walk into the church. So our mission is called Steiger, and that's what we do. We say we reach the global youth culture. I'm the European and Middle East director, so I get to work with teams all around the region. And I'm excited to see what God is doing right now, because I believe that He is raising up a young missionary movement right now, not just in Steiger, but in many other organizations, where I'm seeing a new hunger among young people and young adults to share their faith boldly and to reach this generation. And I think that's what we need. I think we need a new move of God to break through the barriers of secular culture today. And what I'm starting to see reminds me of the Jesus movement in the 60s and 70s, when there was a whole generation that was very lost and confused, and God raised up some unexpected people who didn't fit in the structure, who were disenfranchised, were the very guys that often came from the hippie culture came to Jesus and were then used radically to reach their peers. And we saw a movement, an evangelistic movement spread and reach, some estimate, 250,000 young people at that time through that movement. And I'm praying that God would move again in similar ways. And two key things that I saw or see as I look into some of the great moves of God, including that one, is a combination of cultural relevance. The guys in the Jesus movement, they knew the culture of the time because many of them came from that. And they knew how to connect with it and how to speak the language of the culture, of the people around them. So it was relevance combined with bold proclamation, with sharing the gospel clearly, with just telling people who Jesus is in a very straight and clear way. And I think that's what we need today. We need people who are involved, engaged in the secular culture of our cities, yet boldly sharing Jesus with passion, filled with the Holy Spirit, sharing Jesus. So that's what we're praying for. For a lot of us, it's been like over the last 10, maybe 20 years, waking up and going, wow, suddenly the way people feel or see church has changed, but we often haven't changed yet our approach. So I like what you said, it's like, okay, I need to rethink, how can I approach people? We're still hoping people will come to us, and so many would not anymore. And that's going to be one of the key things I want to dig into. It's this challenge. There's a cultural gap between the church and secular culture around us, and we often don't realize how people are seeing the church, how they're seeing Christianity, and we're struggling to get across, to communicate. So one of the things we do with our mission is we follow a very basic principle. Rather than waiting for them to come to us, we want to go to them, which is nothing new, right? This is the missionary principle throughout hundreds of years. It's what we see in Acts. It's what Paul did. It's what Jesus did as he connected with people around him. He was with them where they were. He went to them first. He listened, he connected, and then he could speak into their lives. And so we have teams in cities all around the world doing this. And our teams in Poland go to a festival every year called Polish Woodstock, which had to change their name because Woodstock sued them. So they called it Poland Rock, which I don't think is a very good name. But we still go there with our teams. Every year we set up a tent and we serve a breakfast for the people in the festival so we have an opportunity to connect with them. So we'll have hundreds of people coming through our tent every morning. We'll serve them breakfast and we'll spend hours talking, praying for them. This festival, you have to imagine, it's the largest in Europe. 800,000 people go to this every year. Big open-air festival. And it's craziness. It's like 5-6 days of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it's just, well, it's not all rock and roll now, right? So it's all different styles of music going on, but the craziness is the same. There are two kinds of security guards in this festival. There are the big guys who go around splitting up the fights, and there are the guys going around with wheelbarrows so that they can pick up people from the sidewalk who have passed out because they've been drinking too much. So that's the environment of this festival. And we take all our teams there. We invite different churches we work with to come with us, and we're there, present in that place. And we spend 6 days there talking to people, camping out, and spending time with them. And I was there with our teams, and I'm looking into that sea of people in the festival and thinking, well, this is great what we're doing, but how can we reach all of those guys and girls? It just have you ever had that sense of a weight of like, what can I do? You know, there's so many people lost who are never going to get the chance to hear in a way they can understand. What can I do? And I started praying for that crowd of people. And as I was praying, I felt like God said to me, why don't you go and play your concert with your band in this festival? And I thought, well, that's a great idea, but there was a problem. Usually to play in a festival with your band, you have to be invited. And we weren't invited. So I was trying to explain this in my prayer, and I felt like God challenged me, and he said, you don't need an invitation, just go. So I talked to our team, and I said, let's get the PA system and a generator and go into the crowd and do our concert. So we got all of our gear, and we walked into the festival, and we went one by one so the security guards wouldn't notice. And we set up in the middle of the crowd. We put our big speakers on, our generator, and then we started playing our music. Now, my band is a riot rock band. So we start playing our music, and it's like a protest. So I don't start like you usually would, and it's not like, hi, we're here to tell you about Jesus. I start by coming in saying, this isn't a concert. It's a protest. It's a protest against the lies that we've been told since the day that you were born, that you are an accident, that you're here by chance, that life is just to buy stuff, get old and die one day, that love is just a passing feeling, and that you're all on your own trying to figure out who you are and why you're here. All these things are lies, and we're here to protest against those lies. And as I'm saying that, everybody's gathering, the crowds are gathering, and they're going, yeah, come on, it's a protest. So they're all gathering around, and the music starts, the riot rock and the electronic music, and everybody's going crazy and dancing and getting into the party mode. And in between each song, I'm explaining, talking into identity issues, issues of purpose, of belonging, of wanting to find out why I'm here and who I am and what am I on this earth for? What is true? And what's not true, what's right and what's wrong. I talk about issues of relationship, suicidal thoughts, depression, all the things that come into this. And as I'm going through our songs and talking about these things, the crowd is growing, and the security guards arrive, and they're like, what's going on here? And I thought, okay, they're going to shut us down. But they didn't shut us down. They just said, hey, do you think you could try to move your crowd a little bit out the road because the cars can't get by anymore? So we asked the crowd to move a bit, and the crowd's growing. And soon I start going into the deeper stuff, and I say, the reason we're here is that you were made by a loving God. And he's alive, and he's here right now, and he cares about you. And he came to this earth and became like me and you. And he died a horrible death so that we could have peace with God again. And that's the truth. Now, you might, and I say this, especially in Poland, I say, now, when I say the name Jesus, you might think of politics, or you might think of an institution, a religious institution that you don't believe in anymore, that you don't trust anymore. But I want you to know that Jesus isn't politics or an institution. He is a person. He's alive. And he's not just an image you see in a church, but he's here right now, and he cares about you. And he makes it possible for all people to have peace with him. Not just for religious people, but for people like me and you to have peace with him. And at that point, they're going, yeah, come on. They're shouting. All the crazy guys who you think might run away when you talk about Jesus are getting into it. And I say, does anybody here want to make peace with God right now? And to do that, you have to surrender. You have to say, God, would you come into my life? Anybody here want to make peace with God? And so all the crazy guys and girls are raising their fists in the air saying, yeah, I want to make peace with God. And for many of them, that's the first step they've ever taken towards the possibility that there is a God who cares. Maybe it's the first time they've heard that God is for them. Maybe it's the first time in their environment that they've understood something that is for them. And we spent hours praying, talking to people afterwards, and we repeated this 5 times throughout the festival in different places, sharing the message. Now, you might think we'd get kicked out of the festival or at least not allowed back in. But what happened the next year was we got a call from one of the main stages in the festival. And they said, would you come and play your concert on our stage? And I said, why? We're not a well-known band. Why are you inviting us? And the organizer of the stage said, last year I was walking through the festival and I saw an illegal concert in the middle of the street. And in his words, he said there was a fire in the crowd and I want that fire on my stage. I didn't warn him that the fire was the fire of the Holy Spirit. And I said, well, come. What kind of stage is it? And he says, this stage is run by the Hare Krishna movement. Okay, so I went back to our band members and I said, we've been invited to one of the main stages and it's run by the Hare Krishna movement. Can we go there and preach Jesus? And we prayed and we felt like God said, yes, come on. So we went and we played on the Hare Krishna stage and we gave the same message. And I talked about Jesus' death and resurrection. And after I stepped off the stage, the Hare Krishna MC came on the stage and he said, isn't it interesting to hear a band talk about spiritual truth and about a God who died on a cross and came back to life again? And so my wife nudged me and she said, the Hare Krishna MC is preaching the gospel again. And I'm telling you this story because I believe 2 things. That the gospel is powerful today to reach the hardest hearts, to turn people who you think would not want to know. And second, that this generation is spiritually hungry. And we often think that they don't want to hear, that they've already rejected it, that they don't want to know. But the truth is they're spiritually hungry. They just need people to go to them, to go to where they are, and to share the message in a way they can understand. So as I said before, I want to dig into some of the ideas of this culture. And I'm going to go through 7 lies briefly. The first lie I think this culture believes is that we can only be sure of the things we see. This is materialism. It's the idea that there is nothing more, or if there is, nobody really knows. There aren't answers. There isn't certainty. It's, put in other words, there's no absolute truth. But, people don't use those words often. They're just thinking, if I can see it, if it's my career or something I buy or something maybe in a science book, I can believe it. But anything else, nobody knows. But there's a problem with this way of thinking because the most important questions in life are about things you can't see. Like, is there love? And can I find love? Who am I? What's my identity? What's the purpose of my life? Why am I here? All these big questions that everybody's looking for are things you can't see. They're things you can't prove scientifically or that you can't buy. These are the things that people are missing, and it leaves us with a void, with a gap, with an emptiness. And so behind that is another lie. Lie number 2, that we are all here by accident. And we've grown up being told this in school, in university, through media, that there is no bigger purpose. And it's because of the first lie, because there's something I can't see. I don't know where I come from or why I'm here. So maybe there is no bigger purpose. Most people might not say it as black and white as this. I'm here by accident. I have no purpose. Some do. But most people live like that's true. They live like nobody really knows. And so I just have to get on with life. How do we get on with life when those 2 ideas are there? It sounds quite depressing. Well, what people do is they believe another lie, that it doesn't matter. Everything's going to be okay. I don't have to figure out these things. I don't have to know the answers to the big questions. I can just get on with my life and have fun. So live for the now, enjoy myself, find a passion in life, find a hobby, or find a job that I'm very passionate about, or maybe find somebody, that one special person who will complete me, and I'll be okay. Everything will be okay. But then, tragedy hits, personal tragedy, COVID pandemic hits, wars come, and then suddenly the ground is taken from beneath our feet, and it's not okay anymore. And we don't have the answers, and we don't know what to do with it. And that's what this generation is feeling. That's why there's so much anxiety. And that's why there's so much addiction as well. You see majority of young adults saying themselves that they feel like they're addicted to social media and they don't know what to do about it. Teens, and also older than teens now, there's no age limit to that. Video games, whatever it be, pornography, hugely impacting our society. And that's inside the church as well. It's inside and outside. These addictions, these things that people are looking for to try to make life okay when I've never really figured out the answer to those most important questions. It also affects our identity. You were sharing this, the confusion in gender and in identity. Because line number 4, I've been told I can be whoever I want to be. And this is preached in every movie, in every song, in every social media post. And it sounds like amazing freedom. It's the adventure of life. It's the Hollywood story. Yes, I will be whoever I want to be. I'll be the hero. I'll be this special person that the world doesn't know yet how amazing I am. We have this idea. But really, it's the heaviest burden we're carrying, because it's like being dropped in an abyss with no answers. It's being told, hey, you can be whoever you want to be, and the options are infinite. You can choose whatever you want, go for it, be free. And then there's no reference, there's no answer, there's nothing I can look to, and it leaves us deeply confused. We don't know how to. So a lot of young people today, last year we were at that same festival, and they were doing a love parade through the festival. And it was weird, because the parents that are like millennials or older millennials are encouraging their Gen Z kids, come on, go to the love parade. And the Gen Z kids have got cuts all up their arms, and they're going like, I don't know who I am or what I'm supposed to be. How do I figure it out? Like, the options never end. And so it's not sometimes it'll be portrayed like a happy, amazing freedom, but deep inside there's so much pain and confusion related to this. Line number 5, it doesn't matter what you believe. I was told this throughout university. I wanted to share my faith. I studied therapy and art, and I wanted to share my faith in that environment. And I was told, hey, it's cool that you believe that, but don't bring it here into the academic world or into the professional world. There's not room for that here. And I would ask my friends, well, what do you believe? And they would believe a mix of different things. And at the end of the day, there was this underlying idea that it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't, make any difference. Just get on with your life. And so choose whatever you want. And it leaves us again confused, because we can't find the answers to the questions. Line number 6, it affects our identities and it affects our relationships, the way we relate to each other, because we believe that love is just a passing feeling. Because if nobody knows the answers to the big questions, nobody knows the answers to questions like, what is love? And so we say, love is love. Yeah, which doesn't mean anything. It's like Brexit means Brexit. It doesn't mean anything, right? It's just, so we're in this place where we're stuck. We can't define things anymore. We can't, and that means that I don't know how to really love somebody or be loved, which leads me to that feeling you described of not fitting in anywhere. Like, I can't belong because I don't know how to truly connect, how to deeply belong somewhere. And it's a lie that is destroying the fabric of society, destroying families, destroying real relationships. Now, all of that would be different if there was a God. And most people today don't classify themselves as atheists, but they will say, nobody really knows. And they'll say something else. They'll say, oh, that's great that you believe in that, but I'm not religious. That's a very common answer today. I don't know if you guys have come across this, but it's so very common. Oh, it's nice that you believe that, but I'm not religious. What do they mean by that? Well, they're imagining a culture or an institution that maybe their grandparents were part of. You said that from Manchester, his grandparents might have been involved. So maybe their grandparents were part of that, but they no longer identify with it. And it's not necessarily, for some people, it's a bad feeling, a negative, like, oh, I hate church. But for a lot of people, it's just like, hey, it's just not my thing. I don't fit in. I'm not religious. So they feel like they don't identify, and that's a barrier. That's a barrier. And I would suggest it's a lie, and we'll dig into that a little bit. But these things leave us wanting meaning and wanting to belong. Two big heartfelt needs of this generation. It's like, I want to find meaning in my life, and I don't know how, and I want to belong somewhere, and I feel like I can't. I just can't connect. That's why, some of the people studying social paradigms and changes, and they're looking at how people relate to their jobs and careers. That's why we're hearing more and more people saying, oh yeah, Gen Z, they're not so concerned about how much they're paid or stability. They want purpose in their work. Why? Because of this. Because there's a deep, heartfelt need of wanting meaning, wanting purpose. And it's because we've more and more made our culture void of God, who is the source of meaning. And so there's this sense. So here's a band I listen to, a bit different to Bob Marley. It's although I appreciate Bob Marley as well. This band's from the UK, not far from Manchester. They're from Sheffield. And they are a post-hardcore band, if you know what that is. Probably not. But they would maybe say that they're atheists or agnostic, but their lyrics are deeply spiritual. I have a hole in my soul growing deeper. The loneliness is haunting me, and the weight of the world is getting harder to hold up. Who will fix me now? Save me from myself. Don't let me drown. See, for me, this is the voice of this generation. This is the cry. And this is what I mean by spiritual hunger. Remember what I said at the beginning. I believe the gospel is powerful today. It's beautiful. It responds to the lies. It's powerful today. And second, this generation is spiritually hungry, and there's some proof. And again, you could find a lot of songs to prove this point, that yes, the lies are present, but also the spiritual hunger, the cry for something more is there. And interestingly, last year, we were in Oslo doing a big impact event with our mission. We had 700 people from all over Norway and Europe go to the streets of Oslo. We went to 50 different locations and shared the gospel all over the city. It was an amazing time. And one of the places we went to was a big metal festival where this band was playing. And my wife is a very bold evangelist. She goes and walks up talking to people. And we were backstage at this festival because we know one of the artists who was playing, and he got a backstage pass. And she sees this singer. And I wasn't able to be there. I was preaching somewhere. So she messaged me and she said, you know the guy you always talk about in your seminars? He's here right now. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And she walked straight up to him and she goes, how are you doing? What's up? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And she goes, my husband, he's a preacher and he's always using your songs as an example in his messages. And he's like, really? That's crazy. And she was like, yeah. And she said, because your songs are so full of spiritual searching, like you're looking for something more, you're looking for answers. And he said, yeah, it's true, I really am. He said, in fact, I often go to like meditation places or prayer places because I'm trying to look for something. I want to know what there is, what's more. And she said, well, can I pray for you right now? And he said, yes, please. And she started praying for him. And when she finished, he was in tears. And God was moving in his heart and she was able to explain who Jesus is. And that's what I mean. That there is spiritual hunger in this generation right now. What I see in that is a desire for a better world, a desire for change, a desire to do something again, to have a purpose, to do something meaningful with my life. And many of the things they're trying to do are values that, at least at the surface, are the same values we hold, because they're trying to protect the planet or find peace and justice and love and equality, and that the world will be a better place. And so they're fighting, this generation is fighting for these things, and often going to the streets for it, often risking their lives for it. And yet, as you pointed out, we know the source of all those things, and something that truly answers those things. And if only they could understand, if only they could see the connection. And that's, I think, some of what we need to do, is to make the connection for them. Because, as C.S. Lewis said, if I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. If we can help them see that the reason they're looking for meaning and belonging is because they were made for that, and there's only one place they can find it. If we can help them see that there is an answer to each of the ideas or lies or things that are weighing on them, then they'll realize how much they need it. And so I think a lot of the work we have to do is exactly in responding to those lies. You see, if there is a God, then there is so much more. I can be sure of so much more than the things that I can see. In fact, the most precious things in life are things that I can't see, and we all know it. No matter how atheist we are, we know it. People know it today, because I can be sure of love, and I can't see it. I feel it. There are signs of it. It changes the way I think, the way I make decisions, the way I live my life. And so I can help people see today that there is so much more that we are sure of, that we do live by, that we can't see. And so it's just simply not true. And if there is a God, then you're not here by accident, but you were made by a loving God who designed, who created you, and who gives you purpose. It's a powerful message. It's a simple one that we all know, but it's a powerful message for young people today to realize you're not an accident, but you were designed, you were made, you have a purpose, you're loved. There's more to life than just these material things. If there is a God, then everything is not okay. There's something missing. And that's, again, something most people recognize. When we put our heads on the pillow at night, we know there's something missing. There's something not okay. And that's what I tell people all the time. When I'm in conversations like the one Emmanuel had with the girl, he was working in her home, and she says, "Oh, I don't need God. I'm all good." I try in the conversation to help that person to think a bit more deeply and to say, well, that's great. I'm really happy for you that those things are good. But is everything really okay? Do you know why you're here? Do you know what the point of all of this all is? And do you ever have moments of just feeling like there's an emptiness, or there's a lack of something, or there's something not okay? And most people will say, yes, totally. There's something not right with the world around us. If there is a God, then I can know who I am. I can know for sure. And I don't have to make it up. I don't have to make up who I am, but I can discover the man and woman I was made to be. If I can find my origins, if I can find my maker, then I can discover who I was made to be rather than having to figure it out all on my own. If there is a God, then it does matter what you believe, big time. It really matters because it changes everything. And again, going back to my days in university, that was something I found, and I ended up having an amazing opportunity where God used me to help others see that. So I was getting frustrated that in university my teachers and my colleagues were always saying like, "Oh, it's great you're religious, but don't bring it into the classroom." And I would say, "Well, what do you believe in then?" And they would often be unsure. "I'm not sure. I like Hinduism, and my mother's Catholic, and so I mix this and that." And so I decided to make that my end of course dissertation. And it was called Worldviews in Therapy and Art. How important is my worldview in what I do? How important is what I believe in what I do? And so I went around asking all my colleagues and my professors and teachers what they believed about basic things. Why are we here? Where did we come from? We're all trying to help people have better lives through art therapy. So what is a better life? What does that look like? What is health? What is well-being? What are all these things? And it was crazy because a lot of the time the answers were, I don't know. I've never really thought about it. And so I said, well, we're all studying to help other people and we don't know how to have a better life, how to be well. And so that created a lot of conversation. And my professor, who was an atheist, after I went around asking everybody else, she said, now you need to write in your work what it is you believe about these things. And I was like, great, that's easy. So my last chapter was a gospel presentation. I believe that being well and being healthy is to be forgiven, to be free from the inside. And that affects my mental health, my physical health, and everything. And to have that, I need to be reconciled with my maker, with the one who made me. And I presented that and got good marks. And the whole class got to hear the message of the gospel. But the whole point of it was, what I believe changes the way I live, and it matters. And so when a generation is being told, hey, it doesn't matter, they know it matters. They know. In fact, that's why they're going, no, actually, I'd really like to find something to believe in that really changes the way I live my life. If there is a God, love is not just a passing feeling. Love is a deep, sacrificial commitment. It is the kind of love we read about in the Bible. In 1 Corinthians 13, love is kind, love is patient, it does not envy, it's not jealous. Love is forever. Or the love shown on the cross. No one has greater love than he who dies for his friends. And the love shown on the cross through Jesus. That's the love this generation is looking for, and they can't find it because they're being told love is just a passing feeling. If they hear, sometimes I've literally just read that poem, that beautiful part of 1 Corinthians 13, and they're like, that's so beautiful. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. And they don't know it. They don't know where to find it. And we have something unique in the reality of the gospel, in the reality of the love that Jesus showed and taught. There's something unique in the church being a body, a community of people from all different ages and social backgrounds who love one another and who forgive 70 times 7. This is unique. This is what this generation is looking for. And finally, if there is a God, I don't have to be religious in the way they think to find him, because he doesn't fit in the box of any one culture or institution or denomination. He's beyond all of that. And often in Poland, when I'm sharing the gospel message, be it at that festival where I said, when I say Jesus, you think of politics and an institution, but I want you to know that he is much more than that he is not about politics or an institution. This is who he is. They need to hear that message. When I'm in a public square and we're doing public evangelism that we do a lot through our mission, I'll say, we often think God is locked up in an old building that we see as like a museum today. And we don't go there. We're not interested. But I want you to know that God is not locked up in an old building. He's here. He's alive. He's in this place and he's for you. And that's what so many people need to hear today. They need to understand the truth of who God is and how it responds to each of those. Now, I expect that everything I've said are things you know and things you've heard. I'm not giving you any new revelation, but what I'm trying to do is point out some of the key thoughts and ideas that people have, heartfelt needs, ideas that are barriers to the gospel, and how powerfully and simply the gospel responds to each of those. And I believe that should influence the way we share the gospel today. It should influence how we go about reaching people outside the church. It should also influence how we're talking to our young people in the church. Are we addressing these issues? Are we talking about these things and showing the connection, how the gospel responds to those ideas and lies? I want to give you the basic principles that we've been following in raising up teams of mostly young people, young adults, who are engaging with secular culture in their cities and reaching many people that come from this kind of background. And I'll start with just giving an example, another example of stuff we do with art and music. and going into the hard places. I give some extreme examples because then you can think, well, if it worked in that place, it'll work in my neighborhood or in my city and in my place. So I was with my band and we tour in Poland, and we don't usually play in churches, or I think if we were to play at ELF, they'd never invite me back again. But what we do is we go into the festivals and the clubs, like this club called Voodoo. So we were invited to play in Voodoo Club in Warsaw, Poland. And we were playing with a number of other hardcore bands there. And when I went into that place, it was a dark atmosphere, the obscenities written all over the walls. It's a heavy environment, so much so that I felt physically tired being in that place. I was like, I don't want to be here. And I was feeling kind of sick. And I told my bandmates, I was like, I'm going to go and sit in the car for a bit. And I sat in my car and I fell asleep in the car because I was so tired. So my bandmates came and woke me up. Come on, it's time for the concert. And I'm just praying, God, please help me. I'm weak. I'm tired. I don't know how to do this. And I got up on the stage and I did again that message of responding to those lies. And often what I'll do in communicating the gospel in a place like that is I'll say, you guys are looking for equality, for justice, for peace and love and all these good things. And I say that because often when I share the gospel on the streets, people will say to me, I'm not religious. And I say, well, what do you believe in? And they'll often respond, I believe in human rights. Or something related to human rights. Like, I believe that we should be good to each other or respectful, etc., etc. But I believe that human rights starts somewhere. It has an origin somewhere. So I say, all these values, all these things we're looking for come from somewhere, from one place. It comes from the most powerful being in the universe, dying the death of a slave and making God accessible to all people. That is the origin of equality, of justice, of peace, of love. That's where it all began. In fact, human rights were based on that reality. There are secular historians who will claim that there was no way for human rights to exist if it was not for the cross of Jesus, because that's where it all comes from. And I'll explain the gospel in that way. I ended the concert and I said, maybe I'm going to do something you're not usually supposed to do in Voodoo Club. I'm going to pray and I'm going to talk to Jesus. And so I just stepped into the crowd and did that. But you saw the reaction. They're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And then afterwards I'm like, if you want to talk, come and talk to us. And we ended up talking to lots of them. And I got a message from one of the lead singers of one of the other bands afterwards, because I spent a good time talking to him. And he wrote to me and he said, it's funny, we talked for like 20 minutes, but it's made me feel really different. And he said, I want to thank you for helping me see and understand that. And he said, he'd been through a lot of hard things. He described how his dad had been abusive, broken family. He'd tried going, at one point, his mother had tried taking him to a church. And she had asked, I think she went there and asked for him to be baptized. And in that particular denomination, they told her, oh, you're divorced, so we can't baptize your son. I'm not sure what denomination that was. But anyway, that was the reaction he got from trying. And so he felt like, okay, it's just, there's nothing I can do. But he said, you've brought me closer to Jesus today. And if nobody else in that room felt that way, it was worth it. And so we'll get reactions like that because when we go to where people are and speak truth and bring the gospel, combining again what I said at the beginning, relevance and boldness to share Jesus, then I constantly see God moving and people responding and coming to him. These are the three basic things that we focus on. I believe we need to know the scene of our cities. We need to know the secular scene. We need to know the culture. It's basically doing what I just did, which is to do a brief overview of what are people thinking about and feeling and how are they responding and what are the barriers to the gospel today. And a lot of it can be what our sister in the back, I think I forgot your name, is it Esther? Maybe, talked about songs. Pop culture, movies, songs. We get to know how people are thinking and feeling. But the best source, the best book to understand secular culture today is talking to people. Going to people's homes, like Emmanuel did, and talking and seeing how they respond and listening and learning. So get to know the scene. Second, that's relevance. Second, boldness. Speak truth into that scene. So I'm praying, I'm getting to know that scene, and I'm saying, God, how can I communicate you in a clear way to people today? How can I, in Woodstock Festival, make the name of Jesus known? How can I in Voodoo Club make the name of Jesus known? How can I in my neighborhood, in my city, make the name of Jesus known? And that's what we challenge our missionary teams around the world to do. These are guys in their 20s, and we say, go and get to know your cities, go to the clubs, go to the cafes, go to the parks, meet people, and then pray, God, how can I communicate you in a clear way to these people today? And third, make disciples in the scene. And I'll spend a whole part just on that after the break, because we often think of discipleship, again, as something that has to happen in the church. People come to us. They have to come to us. They have to find their way to a church. They have to like the church meeting enough to stay. And then they get to go to a discipleship group or a Bible study group. The amount of young people today that will go through that is very small. So how are we going to reach them? We have to go out to them. We have to make the gospel public, and we have to make discipleship happen where they are in a way that's accessible to them. So briefly, knowing the scene, knowing the culture is about building relationships. It's about really connecting with people. It's about asking good questions, thinking about the things that they think about, trying to understand what is important. That's why I ask them questions like, well, what do you believe in then? What's important for you? What's valuable for you? What do you care about? It's helping me then learn how to communicate in a way that they can understand. It's partnership in the scene. What do I mean by that? Well, those bands that I just mentioned we played with in Voodoo Club, we just did a tour with them last month. And we went to 5 cities in Poland, playing in clubs everywhere with 10 non-Christian bands. Now you might ask, how did you get to tour with 10 non-Christian bands playing in clubs all around the country? Well, the answer is, we organized it. Now you might say, well, you what? You booked concerts with non-Christian bands in these places? Yes, because that's how I'm going to get in front of a crowd of people who don't know Jesus. And that's the goal. I'm tired of doing evangelistic events where most of the crowd are all Christians, and maybe there's a friend or two that somebody brought along. I want to go where people are, where they're not hearing the gospel, and share the gospel to them. How do I do that? I need partnerships in the secular scene. I need to know people. I need to do what Jesus did, to know the names of the prostitutes and the tax collectors and all the people who are out there. I want to know the names of the club owners, of the guys organizing the parties in our city, of the student movements, of the ones who are organizing the protests, the influencers on social media. I want to know their names. I want to have a friendship with them, and I want to work with them so that I can get the gospel where it needs to get. So that's a big part of knowing the scene. Speaking truth into the scene is being bold. And this is one of the main messages we give in our mission is, guys, let's be bold. Let's have courage. And courage is not lack of fear. Courage is not lack of fear. It's a step of obedience through the fear. It's when I'm feeling sick and afraid in my car so much that I fall asleep, and then stepping through that fear and saying, I'm going to go and I'm going to share Jesus. And each of us have different gifts, so it will look different for each of us. But for all of us, it means stepping outside our comfort zone, being bold for Jesus today. And we need a generation of missionaries doing that. It means pointing to Jesus and being clear about the gospel message. We often go from one extreme to the other. You know how Jesus talked about being salt and light? And he talked about the salt which gives taste to the food. And if it loses its taste, if it loses its saltiness, it's not useful anymore. The salt was used at that time to preserve what is good as well. So you have salt that is distinct, that makes a difference, that preserves what is good. So Jesus says, be that. Be distinct. Preserve what is good. Be different in the world. But then he says, be light. And a light has to be like a city on a hill that everybody can hear, everybody can see. So it's influential, it spreads, it's visible for everybody to see. So what is Jesus saying when he says be salt and light? He says be distinct and different in this world. Have taste. And he says be light, be influential, let everybody see you. So I have to be different and influential. But as a church, we're usually falling into one extreme or the other. Sometimes we are very salty, very good at being salt. We're very different. We're very clear about our message. We're very biblical about our message. And we preach it loud and clear every Sunday morning. And all the Christians that are faithful hear it. But nobody else does. Nobody else out there is hearing. They don't understand it anymore, and they're not coming anymore. And when they do come, they don't understand it. We're being salt. We're not being light. But there are other times as believers that we are good at being light. We are shiny. We're the pop culture church. We're the missionary movement, the ministry that is cool, that everybody likes and loves and everybody knows, but we've forgotten our message and we've lost our saltiness and we're no longer clear about the gospel because we're so concerned about being relevant, about connecting with the culture that we leave behind our Christian identity, who Jesus is and what the message is, and we start just molding and becoming more and more like the world. What if we did both? What if we were salt and light? What if we were there in Voodoo Club, in the darkest places? What if we were present in the secular scene and bold and clear about the message of who Jesus is? What if we were finding ways to be influential, but we were very clearly communicating the truth and believing that that is what can answer every lie, every broken family, every broken heart? Believe again that the gospel is powerful and that he can move. And finally, when people respond and they say, yes, I want to know more, like Vicky, the girl from Wroclaw, from the protest, who came from a broken family and said, yes, I need to know more about this Jesus. She was invited into our lives, into our home, and that's where she started to grow. Discipleship started the day we met her, not the day she walked into a church. And that relationship of inviting her into our lives is what grew and she became a follower of Jesus, a bold follower of Jesus.